Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Welcome to it's Thursday, so it's a keto coffee with Karen. Mondays is a coffee with Karen where we just cover sort of current events. We cover a bit of business, self-development. And then Thursday's show is really we're focusing on health. So either holistic health or restorative health. So my guest today, we're going to talk about a time to nourish. We've been talking about healthy gut, having a healthy gut and the importance that plays, especially for women if you are maybe over 40 and coming up to peri-menopause and beyond, somewhere where, I might be in that bracket. So Trish, welcome to the show. If you could just first of all explain to the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. Hello, listeners. Thanks for having me on the show. So I am a qualified nutritionist and I specialise particularly in gut issues and particularly for women over the age of 40, because we find that as we go through the menopause, we have all these really interesting symptoms. A lot of
I like that
uncomfortable symptoms where we find ourselves accidentally overweight and we're becoming very irritable, and we may be more prone to allergies and belly bloat and not sleeping well, and all of this of course has a big effect on our libido. And it's interesting because I see a lot of this in clinic, and I know that it stems from gut issues, liver issues, potentially parasites, and a hormonal imbalance. So we see this direct connection between the main sex hormones and, of course, then the knock-on effect with cortisol. And who hasn't got cortisol right now? I mean, show me a woman in this country right now or anywhere in the world who is not experiencing high levels of cortisol.
But for those who haven't heard of what cortisol is, can you just explain what cortisol is? Because not everybody will know that term.
Yeah, okay. So when we talk about hormones, cortisol is a big one. It's a stress hormone, and it is responsible for that fight and flight effect in our body. Now, it's really interesting to note that in terms of hunter-gatherer time, the cortisol response, or that stress response, was designed to be triggered maybe 3 or 4 times in our life. Okay. Now, ladies over the age of 40, we have this chronic stress situation where cortisol is being triggered all day long.
Daily, especially at the moment, right? I think everybody of all ages are experiencing this, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I'm trying to homeschool two of my boys. One's in high school, one's in primary school. I started late in life. I've got 2 young children. And whatever the situation, whether you're caring for your aging parents, you're worried about your husband who's lost his job, you're worried about your own job, you're working from home, you're trying to balance all the demands of maybe even university-age children back at home, all this sort of thing. It's very stressful. So we have this knock-on effect on cortisol, and cortisol is that stress response. And that stress response is really only designed to happen 3 or 4 times in our life when we're meant to run from the tiger. And then the cortisol picks up to give us that adrenaline to flood the limbs with enough energy to escape from the tiger and survive. Mm-hmm. Now, when we have our cortisol kicking off, we have an effect on our blood pressure, our blood sugar levels, so our insulin response, our thyroid, our body temperature, our metabolism, our storage of fat, but also our digestion. So we're not absorbing the nutrients from the food that we're eating because we're highly stressed. And therefore we're probably more likely, because of the blood sugar dips, we're probably more likely to be reaching for the wrong types of foods, carbohydrates, sugary foods, cakes. I mean, who hasn't made a cake in lockdown? My goodness, all the home baking. going on, and that's the way we cope. And then, of course, we get to 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock and we think, right, we need a bit of a helping hand. We're going to have either coffee or booze or both. Mm-hmm. And then that again plays havoc with insulin, thyroid, cortisol, and, of course, the sex hormones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is underpinning all of this is the health of the liver. So if you got to the age of 40 and you haven't done a liver cleanse where you've taken time out of eating gluten and dairy and booze and caffeine and refined sugar, then, it's a really good time to look at that. So that's what I do. I help women make those changes. If they're, they can be short-term changes. I like to stage the changes because it can be quite overwhelming. If you've been eating off track for a long time, we want to pull that round and restore the health of the liver and then restore the balance in those main hormones to get your energy levels back up and get you sleeping well and get you feeling lighter and brighter.
Fantastic. I mean, do you not think that really is the underlying foundation of health overall? If everything is clogged, the way I've always looked at it, I've done many various liver cleanses, colon cleanses over the years. We tend to spend more money on our cars. Our cars go and get a service every 6 months or whatever. And people, there's a lot of thought out there, and I see it from people saying, detoxes, don't work, they don't do anything for you. What would you say to people who say that?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. And, the liver is detoxing all the time. That's its job, okay? All the blood is flowing through the liver every 3 minutes. And the liver's role is to take the toxins out of the blood and combine them in bile and dump them out of the liver into the small intestine. And hopefully then from the small intestine, they continue to the large intestine and out of the body, or either out in the skin in sweat or out of the lungs in carbon dioxide and other excess toxins coming out that way. So if all of the main route of elimination is supported well, so if the lymphatic system is working well and the cells are able to release toxins instead of holding onto them and getting really stuck, then the liver's working well, the lymphatic's working well, the gallbladder's working well, the small intestine's working well, the large intestine is eliminating well, then great. Yes, our detoxification process is working really well. But what we see in hormonal women, and we know this from doing Dutch tests and stool tests, that we're seeing a backup where the liver's becoming sluggish, the gallbladder's sluggish, the lymphatic system is sluggish. We have bloating, we have water retention, we have, this sort of thing. The cells are dehydrated and they're becoming stuck. So if you're feeling irritable or stuck in life, that's a picture of the cells being stuck. And therefore the system starts to break down and become very sluggish. And when we see sluggish liver, we see bile calcification. So the bile pathways in the liver and the gallbladder are becoming blocked. And this is because of buildup of inflammation, stress, also toxins that can't really flow out. So dead parasites, for example.
It makes so much sense. I mean, I know so many people, including my mother, who've had their gallbladder removed. And that's a sign that something's, that there could have been something that was done way before then to clear that. So that they didn't, obviously, it's not something that we ideally want to have removed, have overall good health, right?
It's very interesting that when the gallbladder is removed, the little sac that it's storing bile, okay? So there's no storage for the bile. The body still needs to produce bile. So the body's overwhelmed by having to produce more bile. But it's really interesting, that little sac that gets removed, the gallbladder, the body makes another one.
Right.
So you have a compromised gallbladder and liver function, and you have these obstructions of calcification and dead toxins and dead cells. And, we're 70 trillion cells, so we're making cells all the time, but we're also, cells are dying all the time, like 36,000 cells die every day. They've got to be got rid of.
Yes.
So if we have this blockage in the liver and the liver becomes sluggish and we take the gallbladder out, well, we haven't addressed the main root of the problem, that the liver and the gallbladder and the bile pathways are blocked. So, and that can become because of this calcification. So we can do techniques to support the bile flow, and detoxification, you know, in hunter-gatherer time may not have been as important because they were just eating fruit and veg, seeds, or the occasional meat, mostly fruit and veg, some seeds, very time-restricted eating habits, fasting often.
Absolutely.
Locally, seasonally, and not having to even worry about organic because there was no pesticides.
Organic wasn't a thing, it was just natural, right?
And now we're having so much gluten, which is heavily sprayed, where all of our fruit and veg and all of our foods that are coming from all over the world are being stored for long periods. They're becoming rancid. They've got a whole lot of E numbers and chemicals in them. So the exposure to toxins and chemicals is a very different picture. Now, the liver hasn't evolved from hunter-gatherer time, but our food supply has.
Totally. And if you look at the grand scale of things, how long we've been around as human beings, you know, that is such a small amount of time that we have totally changed our diet. Yeah. Absolutely incredible. So for you, with the role of the gut, I mean, again, the way I see it is, you know, the gut is going to be feeding everything. So it's going to have an effect on everything. What is your take on that? I think it's something that people don't necessarily think about as something that's important. Yeah. But where do you hold your views on that?
Look, coming back to I'll tell you my story. Okay. So I'm 51 years old. I've got 2 young boys. I'm menopausal, but for 32 years, I had very debilitating asthma, bronchitis, respiratory challenges. I was born in with it. I'm a twin. I've got an older brother who's 10 minutes older, who is super healthy and strong. I was half his size. I was very weak. And I'd found out 32 years later that I had inherited at birth a hookworm. So wow. I had a lifetime, 3 decades of very debilitating respiratory challenges, severe asthma, severe allergies. I was tested for allergies at the age of 14, and they said, "Oh, you're hyper allergic. You're allergic to so many things. We're not even going to be testing you. And here's a whole range of medication. You're going to be on that for the rest of your life." Ugh. Now, when I peaked at 12 anaphylactic episodes in 1 year at the age of 32,
wow,
4 hospitalizations or rides in an ambulance having adrenaline, or 3 days in a hospital where they checked my vitals. And I ended up in hospital in Greece. I ended up in hospital in Isle of Wight. I ended up in the back of an ambulance in Malmesbury. Ended up in hospital in Cheltenham. This is all when I first came to the UK. And it's a picture of toxicity. My goodness. Yeah. But I was so reactive. Now, when I found my way intuitively to a nutritionist who was a kinesiologist and a parasite and allergy specialist, she diagnosed me with a hookworm, but she also diagnosed me with high candida and leaky gut. Now, I would not have ever put my asthma down to a gut issue until I saw this woman. And therefore, my life changed. And from that point, I was like, right, I'm studying nutrition. I was in the corporate world at the time, and then I spent last 2 decades running a juice business. So I had an interest in health anyway. But yeah, that's where my fascination.
Wow. Candida just comes up again. It's just so common. And again, with so many different illnesses. And I can relate, similar, not as, I wouldn't say as 12 hospitalizations. I would need to go to the hospital just be put on a nebulizer. But yeah, I would suffer with at least 3 bronchitis attacks a year, sometimes pleurisy, and all allergy induced. And quite interestingly, when that stopped, I had done a liver cleanse, colon cleanse, liver cleanse, and parasite cleanse, and then did an internal, actually it was a hydrogen peroxide. And I truly believe I had in my head put it down to more the candida, but from what you're saying there, it could have, I mean, candida is a parasite, I suppose, in a way, but it could have been, more linked to parasites. So how long did that take for you to get rid of?
6 weeks.
There you go.
Life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. And like now, so I like servicing my car.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to her because she's an absolute guru. And even though this is what I do for myself, I go back to an expert and I just check that I haven't picked up other pathogens or parasites, because being Australian, up until this year, traveling back and forward to Australia, traveling via Southeast Asia, so international travel through tropical regions, water from all over the world. I mean, our food is being transported all over the world, fruit and veg, so we're being exposed to, even in our gardening, even if we've got pets, dogs, rabbits, horses, even in public swimming pools, that sort of thing, you're being exposed to pathogens. And the two go very much hand in hand, that, that candida can, if you've got candida present, then that can also go hand in hand with parasites and pathogens bedding down in the gastrointestinal tract. Very, very common that the two will go hand in hand, because often the candida, the craving of the sugars and the disruption to the sleep is often a sign of candida, which is also a sign of parasites, because the pathogens will be feeding off the sugar. So it's the good balance of good bacteria in the gut, where you've got the good balance of prebiotics and probiotics, and that's, the prebiotics, the digestible fiber is feeding the good bacteria balance. When you have an imbalance, candida, yeast overgrowth, and dysbiosis, you get this imbalance of bacteria in the gut, and they start to feed off each other as well. Yeah. So, it's worth doing the work, and then worth doing the regular maintenance, to do the regular liver cleanse, to give yourself a break from the chemicals, the toxins, the alcohol, the gluten, the dairy, the sugars, all that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Good time to do it, because after Christmas, of course, we all indulge mince pies, chocolates, alcohol, whatever, it creeps back in. So it's a good time to think about liver cleanse.
Yeah, sure. And with what's going on at, obviously at the moment, with people who are maybe a little bit more susceptible, would you say that could be a possibility, that might be one of the reasons some people are suffering more than others?
Yes, absolutely. So there is a link between, there's quite a lot of research going on in this area. There is a link between people that worry more and that are very prone to stress, have a higher propensity of parasites, that are more prone to parasites. Now, is it chicken or egg? I mean, what's causing it? Is it that they're more prone to worry, therefore they're more susceptible to parasites, or they're worrying so much because they already have parasites, which makes them more susceptible to sugar cravings, which then leads to anxiety and more worry? You know what I mean? They're very, very linked. So, yes, and I think that, if you are someone who is prone to anxiety, insomnia, irritability, anger, fear, depression, low mood, that sort of thing, to really look at the liver and look at the possibility of parasites driving that. And especially when you see it in kids who, would have been your grandmother would say, if your kids are acting up, oh, he's got worms, give him a worm, that sort of thing, or they're acting out of sorts. And, if you're feeling very teary over, not over nothing, but it feels like it's a classic symptom if a child would come to you and say, I just don't know what's wrong, but it's just, I don't know why I'm so upset. Or they got the classic dark circles under their eyes, and they're really teary and prone to crying at the drop of a hat, but it feels like it's out of their control. They're explaining that they don't quite know why they're feeling this way.
Sure, but they know they're not right.
That it's often an indication of something else that's causing it, some other foreign body that's, robbing them of nutrients and causing the irrationality and the irritability.
Cool. And why do you think that this isn't something that's instantly looked at, or as a first port of call in when people go down the normal route of going to their doctors if they're feeling out of whack?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, it could be considered a bit woo-woo, although there's plenty of proof and evidence when we do stool samples and blood tests to prove the existence of protozoa and elements. And
so it is backed up. It's all backed up by science. It's not just something that you must be suffering with parasites. There are tests that you can have to prove one way or another. And it is a shame that something that could be quite easily solved without long-term medication, as it were. As with you've just told us that you were put on so much medication initially, and there you go. You had it completely solved within, what did you say, 6 weeks? Amazing.
I've been medication free now for 18 years.
Absolutely fantastic.
The medical establishment are not really trained in this sort of area. I think it is becoming more common. So I have a frequency zapper. Okay, now when I first got my zapper, there were very few on the market.
Okay.
Actually, this is the only one I could get. This is the only one I knew of. And what this does is certain parasites cannot survive certain frequencies. So you can tune in certain frequencies. So everything has a vibration. You can measure the energy of everything, thoughts included, as well as foods, as well as living organisms like parasites, right? So you can zap parasites based on a certain frequency for a certain And when I first got my frequency zapper, there was very few. Now you Google frequency zappers, there's a ton of them now. So
it's getting bigger. Yeah, I did look at them. I did look at them myself. I think it's a fascinating area, and just actually when you look at it, it just seems quite just a sensible way of doing things. Like you say, everything, we are energy, everything is various frequencies, colors, frequency, everything's frequency. So zoning in on some nasty little thing that might be living in you, causing you harm, and that you can just come in with that exact or something that's in line to get rid of that particular thing, just makes so much sense, because it's not going to harm any other cell.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And being very targeted with microbiomes, so certain herbs like black walnut tincture and wormwood and clove, very good fennel, dandelion. Some of these herbs are very good at targeting even cayenne pepper, certain parasites don't like cayenne pepper or cysteine, some amino acids. We can get really targeted with our antimicrobials. And it's really interesting also, we target them over the course of the full moon, because parasites are much more active over the full moon. And that's not, again, woo-woo, it's proven because of the serotonin receptors in a parasite. And the word lunatic comes from moon activity. Yeah,
that's probably where half the stories come from.
In the brain, setting you feeling like crazy,
Yeah.
So it's sort of a bit of ancient wisdom combined with modern science, because I do run modern science stool tests, blood tests, that sort of thing to diagnose. And then I'll use ancient healing techniques like clove, the herbs to treat and help eliminate. Yeah, it's an interesting field.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a minefield, but it nature is there to heal, and food is medicine, right?
Absolutely. And that's what we find particularly with menopausal women. If you're getting to this age and you're not including at least 2 portions of cruciferous vegetables in your diet a day, oily fish, lots of good hydration, eliminating the booze, cutting down on the caffeine and gluten and dairy, but particularly adding in the oily fish and adding in good quality seeds like your pumpkin seeds, linseeds, hemp seeds. But the real golden nugget is the cruciferous vegetables, and particularly broccoli sprouts. Like the active ingredient in broccoli sprouts, and broccoli is a very good ingredient for balancing out the hormones.
Right. And yes, the omega-3s, it's, it's something sort of I cover, the imbalance of omega-6 to 3s. I think I was, if I hold my hands up, that I think I was, advising people to eat oily fish twice a week, more as just sort of an automatic response without the real understanding of the why behind it. But actually, yes, that whole imbalance of there's too many omega-6s in the diet, and more than I think I realised. And that imbalance can cause a whole host of affairs, including inflammation in the cells and cell fluidity, so you're not absorbing the nutrients. So it's, I think for people out there that having that understanding of good nutrition, we are what we eat, right? And this is what upsets me with regards to what's going on at the moment, is that people don't seem to be talking about the solutions, which there are many, right? If they come to you with certain ailments, there's going to be a lot of things that can be obviously first tested for initially, and then there's always a way to solve that from a nutritional standpoint, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. Vitamin D, omega-3, zinc, selenium, magnesium, building up the immune system, supporting the liver, making sure we're adequately hydrated. I mean, so many of us are chronically dehydrated. We're just not getting enough water, and then we're not getting enough real food. And the government guidelines for 5 a day or 7 a day in Australia, and the facts around how many people are not getting that, not getting 1 or 2 a day portions of fruit and veg. We can do a lot to support the immune system. And it is disappointing that the government is so focused on the current strategy as opposed to educating people that we need to be adequately hydrated, we need good vitamin D, we need good omegas, we need good quality portions of colourful fruit and veg. We need good fermented foods in our gut to build up that microbiome. That's, there is a lot of study to say that, the microbiome, the diminished microbiome, particularly in America, Australia, and the UK with the Western diet, we see this diminishing microbiome, which means that all the good bacteria is not accounted for. And we want to see little bits of all the good bacteria. And we're seeing this, much less in the range of bacteria, much more shallow in the depth of bacteria, and some bacteria not there at all. And that's so important for the immune system. This is where we develop all of our immune system from the gut. So we are what we eat, but we are what we digest.
Yes.
And if we're not digesting,
and absorb.
if we're not absorbing and we're not digesting, then, and some of the foods that are available are not really food. They're just masquerading as food. They're just not really food.
Absolutely.
If you're eating a ton of ingredients, a ton of foods that have ingredients that you cannot pronounce, it's not food. And you can fill your shopping trolley full of 1,000 calories, 1 million calories probably over Christmas.
Yeah,
going
sure.
up and down all those aisles with all those foods that are chemicals, filled with byproducts of other industries, filled with high fructose corn syrup, filled with damaged grains that are either rancid or stale or got mold in them, then we have these digestive issues.
Yeah, sure. Do you see how long have you been doing this?
Oh goodness. Well, been running the mobile juice business for 17 years. Started studying nutrition after my amazing transformation, my own personal transformation. Studied for 7 years and really been running the clinic for the last couple of years. And of course, the big pivot now to all online consultations particularly for my ladies, mostly in Australia, a little bit of Europe and the UK.
Okay. And have you seen, so, okay, if you've only had the clinic for a few years, but have you seen a real sort of change in the way people are eating, as in, for very possibly for the worse over the time that you've been working, due to like you say, you just go down the aisles and you just think, well, that's anything in anything wrapped in plastic, pretty much.
Plastic's an interesting one because plastic really plays havoc with your hormones, particularly sex hormones and your thyroid. When we look at environmental factors, plastic is such a big one, and it annoys me because plastic is even in our clothing. It's like, it's so frustrating. Try and take plastic out of your life. It's so difficult.
You can't escape it. What one thing actually I never realised, not that I actually drink tea anymore, but I didn't realise there was even plastic in tea bags. I mean, go figure.
I mean, whose idea was that? I mean, come on, that's wrong. That's so wrong. I like the Clipper organic tea bags that are, they're brown and they rot down in the compost really well.
Yeah.
Look, I'll tell you, right. So a couple of the biggest changes I have seen in this country, particularly. So I started the mobile juice business back in 2003. And when I first started that, people, I was doing my first festival was Glastonbury. When I first started, people would come up and they'd be like, "Oh, what is it?" I'd be like, "Oh, it's a mobile juice bar." And they're like, "Okay, all right, we're going to have an orange juice." And now, and especially like mostly women, young girls coming up. And now I see, in the last few years, more middle-aged men coming up and having a detox special, which is a carrot, apple, beetroot, celery juice, and knowing what that is, like coming up with confidence and going, "Oh, I'll have the detox special." So seeing that shift, and more so not just women focusing on their health, but also their partners. So they're young guys or middle-aged men or something coming in and focusing on their health. But also I am seeing a consistent trend in clinic with perimenopause kicking in earlier and lasting longer, and the symptoms being more intense, like a broader range of symptoms. I think there's 39 classified symptoms of perimenopause now. So that's list of symptoms growing, and women suffering more than one, like maybe 6 or 7 or 8, 9 or 13, or all of those symptoms.
And what would you
hot flushes anymore? We're having insomnia, weight gain, hot flushes, androgenic symptoms like facial hair, the big stress, low libido, all of those things together and for longer and more intense. Like the insomnia is worse, the weight gain is more rapid, the irritability, the stress, that it's more intense. So, and I think
why is that? Why do you think that is? What can you put it down to?
Definitely chemicals in the food chain, herbicides, and you can't get around it. Even if you're buying organic, very difficult to avoid the chemicals that are in mass production of food and the mass transportation of food. The stress. We are trying to be all things to all people. We're expecting to have children late in life and still have a career and still have high libido and do all and still
and now teacher as well.
Now and do all those things. So I see that, and I do think we have endocrine disruptors in our beauty regime, in our house cleaning regime,
in our
food chain, and in our environmental factors. So so all of that combined, whether it's even radiation, so mobile phone usage, smart meters, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So it's a combination.
It's a picture of overwhelm, toxicity, environmental factors, lifestyle factors, and messing with the food chain.
Yeah, so I would wholeheartedly agree. Yeah.
Where do you start with all of that? Where you start with what you can control, your diet, your lifestyle factors. You can control the amount of stress that you're under, and you need to counteract the stress with some techniques, whether it's deep breathing, meditation, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, something like that. Time off. You can't be go every day of the year, mums. You just can't. And then giving yourself the time off, hard. I'm a classic culprit, And then, eating as clean as possible. So not relying on coffee, cake, booze to get you through, to push on with the energy. Really, if you feel tired, rest. If you feel tired, drink some water. If you feel tired, nourish yourself well. Take the time to nourish yourself well, not just be, okay, I've got to push on, got to push on, got to push
Absolutely.
on.
I think that's what that if we've learned anything from what's going on at the moment is definitely, I think personally, before, if you thought you were coming down with a cold, you just think, no, dose myself up with cold and flu tablets and soldier on, and then what this has taught us is no, if you're not feeling right, relax, stay in bed, get lots of fluids, make sure you're getting enough electrolytes. And I do seriously feel that even the whole virus thing, there's a lot of talk with some doctors, virologists, that actually believe the viruses are not causing disease, which could be why some people, they're not getting it, they're asymptomatic. And actually what it is the body's process, I suppose, of trying to eliminate toxins with exactly what you've just said. So starting with nutrition, I mean, we all know that, certain illnesses and ailments can be definitely linked to a mineral deficiency, but maybe that's not going to kill you. That on top of, like you've said, toxins, chemicals, the amount of chemicals you can have in your home, on top of obviously petrol, the air we breathe. So a combination of that. On top of that, the EMF. Again, you mentioned that earlier with all the mobile phones and Wi-Fi and this, that, and the other. And then the final one, emotional stress, which you've said all the way along. And it does make so much sense that the body has just become so toxic, which is where people can claim that they think they were healthy, they were perfectly healthy and they've come down, but they might not necessarily know what's actually going on a cellular level. And that could be why that they are suffering more than the others who've just, asymptomatic and no problem. But the issue that I see is that it's, for us to make changes with this, it starts with us, right? Nobody can do it for us. It takes, we've got to take control of, like you say, what we eat and what we're doing. But I suppose awareness is number one. But also, rather than trying to blame one particular thing as the reason we're getting ill, and take ownership, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even down to sleep hygiene, it's so important that we get a really good night's sleep. And people can just brush it off thinking, oh, it's not that important. But, getting a really good quality 7-8 hour night quality sleep is so fine.
Sure. Linked to cortisol again. So for somebody out there who's not sure whether they're in that peri-menopause state, if the ladies out there thinking, how do you know? So what would you say?
I'd say, look, sit with yourself for a moment, write down some of your symptoms, because it's really interesting when we do a gold standard elimination protocol where we take out some of the inflammatory foods. I really encourage my clients to write down a list of symptoms, because simply when you take out those inflammatory foods and you do that for a period of 6 weeks, many of those symptoms can disappear. So start with the symptoms. Are you still menstruating regularly? But also, do you have weight gain, irritability, brain fog, belly bloat, insomnia, body aches? The list goes on. Are you starting to feel those symptoms? Because they're not symptomatic of aging. You can't just say, oh, that's just getting old. I'm getting that extra weight around the middle and I'm aching all the time and I'm tired all the time and I feel really irritable, but I feel really wired and tired, but I can't sleep. That is not symptomatic of aging. So have a think about it. Have a think about your symptoms. Track your cycle. I really encourage my clients and all women, to track your cycle against the lunar cycle. It's very closely linked. but you want to know, are you menstruating on the full moon or the no moon and is it a 28-day cycle or is it a bit, because what happens in the perimenopause, we have, the sex hormones really becoming quite erratic, which then plays havoc with the cycle. So see if you can get a bit of a picture as to how long you're cycling, how long your cycle is for, and what your symptoms are around certain days in your cycle. And, and that's a good place to start.
Right.
And then if you're unsure, you can get tested. Like we can do hormone serum, which will tell us progesterone, estradiol. And we can also do a Dutch test, which is a very complex test. It's urine and saliva. And that tells us all the hormones. What are they doing? Are you producing progesterone, testosterone, estrogen,
Right.
and what they're doing, like how it's one thing to make the hormones, and then it's another thing to metabolize or get rid of the hormones, and you want to be doing both.
Wow. So interesting.
It's a very intensive, complex test, gives you a lot of information, well worth it.
Yeah,
and make a plan from there, because depending on what the tests show, you can eat better for progesterone, you can eat better for cortisol, you can eat better for estrogen, you can eat plant estrogens.
Do you find that there's a lot of because it just seems to be so many sort of estrogen mimics out there? Is that quite common for people to be lacking in estrogen, or do you find that it's more a progesterone issue?
It can be all three. If someone's presenting with very tired and irritable and then a lot of other physical symptoms, and they can all be low, or you can have too much estrogen, not enough progesterone. So it really depends. Everybody's so different. And that's why I think getting a Dutch test is very worthwhile. I mean, it's a very complex test. So it's not something the GP does. It's a private laboratory test, but GPs can do hormone serum tests, which can check estrogen and progesterone.
Right.
And, you can think about eating differently to support those hormones. And
Right. Yeah, I have to say, so just over 3 years ago now, I left. So I'm going to be 49 soon. So I was 46. And I actually left the fitness industry because I had put it down to age. I just thought, getting too old for this, teaching very sort of high energy, a lot of classes a week. And then it came to the March, and it was suggested to me, maybe I should go and see a doctor, thinking that it was perimenopausal. But no, actually, what actually came back was my vitamin D was absolutely on the floor after sort of living in the Algarve for many years and just moving back to the UK, where we don't get a lot of sunlight. That was absolutely on the floor. Whereas I think I'm getting now some of the other symptoms of peri. So what can you do for people who are possibly suffering from a lot of those symptoms, and what would be your sort of course of action?
Okay, so what shows up in all of our protocols is cruciferous vegetables, so 2 portions a day. That's number one. Reducing stress also, depending on how much stress you're in. And sometimes, like high intensity workouts don't really work well for perimenopausal women, especially if they're finding they're really stacking on the weight. Then high intensity workouts can work in reverse, because it's creating that stress response in the body.
Mm-hmm, so absolutely.
Store the fat,
Yeah.
Look at eating differently for cortisol. So you could eat very differently. So you're possibly reducing your portion size, but eating 4 times a day rather than 3, making sure you're not continually snacking, making sure you're getting fat and protein at every meal. So good sources of fat, coconut oil, coconut meal, pumpkin seeds, all of your seeds, very good. Hemp seeds, very good. Oily fish, of course, very good. Eggs, good for some people. Leafy greens at every meal possible, very good. Veggies for breakfast, very good. And then looking at lifestyle factors. So if you're not sleeping well, then you're not rejuvenating, you're not repairing, you're not repairing cells. The parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of the brain which is governing rest, digest, and restore, is out of whack. So lifestyle factors that address that, like sleep hygiene, reducing the stress, yin yoga, deep breathing techniques, Pilates, that sort of level of exercise, making sure you're having a break every day, making sure you're getting outside, getting fresh air every day. Those sorts of lifestyle factors can have a big impact. And then we look at food, we look at, and certainly supplementation. If you get to this sort of stage and you're not taking any supplements, you can get some really quick wins from adaptogens. So ashwagandha, lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, very good.
Right.
B vitamins, really good, making sure a good quality whole food super B supplement with B12, very good. Other ones like zinc, selenium, vitamin C, magnesium, vitamin D, absolutely. But the adaptogens and the multivitamins work very well together.
Right.
And you can get quick wins to balance out energy, support the sleep, and, get your body metabolizing those hormones better. And then you can really look at the food over a long term and say, okay, start to reduce the dairy, the gluten, the caffeine, the white wine, cake, that sort of thing, the gin and tonics. Yeah. And look, it may only be for a certain amount of time. Like I find that, this 6 to 8 week window, when you do that work and you reset and you reduce the inflammation and you support the liver, and then you're right to go again for a while. And then you can feel what it feels like to start to feel good again. And then you can make the choice from there especially about alcohol. Does it serve you, or is it waking you up at 3 o'clock in the morning with night sweats? You can make it an informed place of feeling better and sleeping better and having more energy. And then you can think, oh, well, maybe drinking.
I quite like this. I quite like having this energy.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So you cover quite a wide range of things. So so what would you say that you actually specialize in? What is your main?
Yeah, it really is gut support for perimenopausal women. In saying that, like, some of my clients are men and some of them are hormonal. More so, I think women are possibly more likely to do the work. Although some of the male clients I've got, you give them a plan and they do it to the letter and they just go, yep, just tell me exactly what to do and I'll do it. Brilliant.
I find that a lot. What I've put it down to is that they might not necessarily have so many other things going on. Women are multitasking and worrying about, and sometimes what I've found was sort of with my work is that for some women in that sort of those circumstances, it's harder for them to stick to a plan because their mind's all over the place with the kids and doing this. And so sometimes, depending on what circumstance they're in, the guys can just get it and go because that's their one focus. So not being horrible to the guys, but they can have an unfair advantage.
Yeah. But look, what I really do, I love doing an 8-week program with somebody because you get time to make the lifestyle changes, you get time to see some results with the liver, you get time to see results with energy, and then you also get quite a lot of hand-holding in that time to make sustainable changes.
Right. So you can do a lot in 8 weeks. I mean, would you say you can totally eliminate Candida in 8 weeks? Right.
Depends how long you've had it for, really. Depends on how extensive an overgrowth it is. We do see some great results with Candida in 8 weeks, but then also it is a bit of a continuation program that you will have to closely maintain. It depends on also how it is that you've got Candida. I've had clients before that have been really, addicts that have had serious decades of recreational drug use and not eating the right foods and a big Candida overgrowth. That will take a lot longer to make those changes. So, you know, it really depends. But some candida sufferers, they can make those changes in 6 weeks and good to go.
Can be done. So anybody even who is suffering with asthma, it's not that maybe it's an option, something to absolutely look at and try. Yeah. To see what sort of what response they get. Because I mean, I've always been you know, not wanting to be permanently on medication for the rest of my life. It does seem to be looked at as, well, you know, that's it, you've got asthma, so you've got to be on that inhaler and you've got to take it every day. You think, well, surely there's got to be another way. And it's lovely to hear from somebody else who's done something very similar to do with cleansing the body, which, you know, just sort of made so much sense to me anyway. So what would you say, let's cover some real common, if you can debunk any real sort of common myths that are out there, what would you give?
Yeah, look, I think having been told that I would have to be on that medication for the rest of my life is the big one.
Right.
Question that. You know, when I first came across a nutritionist, I walked in with a box full of medication. I had antihistamines I was taking every day. I was taking Beclofort, Atrovent, Ventolin. I was taking pain relief. I was carrying an EpiPen. I never imagined at that age that I would be free of those medications. I had Intel as a baby, so I had 32 years of medication. So I really encourage people that if you are on medication and you have a desire to reduce it or get off it or explore natural remedies, then do it, because when you find the root cause of a problem, then it's very empowering. And that's why I share my story with people, because it gives people hope and there is another way. And it does take work and it takes discipline and commitment to making lifestyle changes and dietary changes, but it's so worth it.
Worth it. Yeah. Absolutely. Fantastic. Yeah. So, in general, would you say you could tell people that, nutrition and lifestyle changes, what can they do for your overall health?
Look, it is life-changing. Look, even if you're just by drinking more water, you know, there's a brilliant book, and anyone who's struggling with asthma and a whole range of illnesses, one of the first books I read in my studies, and it was, again, life-changing, Dr. Batman-Jetty's The Body's Many Silent Cries for Water. You know, all of these are symptomatic of chronic dehydration. So, you know, drink the
totally. I think I've got that book. Is it blue?
Yes.
My Body's Many Cries for Waters. Yes, I've read it.
So good.
But such a simple thing. I mean, do you not find that this is the thing? People are waiting because they have so much faith in the medical establishment that they're just waiting for a pill to solve all their problems. But, you know, Our Body's Many Cries for Waters, that was it. So just that one simple thing, and people can there you go. It sounds too simple, doesn't it? That so many things could be, not saying you're going to cure everything just by increasing your water intake, but I'm convinced. I mean, I know so many people who do not drink water. Do not drink water, plain water, at any time of the day. I mean, I personally, I do add a mix. I do add electrolytes. I actually now use a water distiller, because it's quite frightening what is actually left in the bottom of the distiller after every litre and a half. So what I do is then I add electrolytes to it. And I do think, I do believe, again, you know, I'm not saying that it's a cure, but my allergies have improved, because I've only been doing that for about 18 months now. No, it must be coming up to 2 years now. And I mean, salt is a natural antihistamine, isn't it? Really? And I haven't had hay fever basically since I've been doing that. And I would add a bit of bicarb soda, a bit of potassium, and a bit of pink salt into my water. And again, that is, rather than flushing the water flushing all the essential minerals out of my body, the potassium and the sodium is pushing the water into the cells. So my cells are hydrated, which is, I suppose, what we're looking for by drinking water, right?
And that's such a simple technique, but put a little pinch of salt in the water, a little bit of bicarb, that's going to, as you say, take it across the cell wall. So where the salt goes, the water will follow. And that's the idea, is getting it into the cell. So it's a really simple technique. And in order of importance, we need good quality air, we need water, and we need nutrients. That's what we need. And then we need love, we need connection, we need community, we need joy, happiness. We need to feel that purpose. As human beings, we're always assigning meaning. So we need positive meaning. So, that's what we really need in our life. So keep it really simple. Make sure you're getting good fresh air. Make sure you're drinking lots of water. Make sure the food that you're eating is real food, and that you're chewing it well, and you're allowing yourself time to digest. So you're sitting down to eat. You're giving yourself time. You're not eating on the go, running the kids around, doing all the things, eating at your desk, eating, watching telly, eating while you're on the phone, scroll, mindfully chewing.
Yeah, sure.
Take the time to nourish yourself properly, and the majority of your symptoms may just disappear just by doing those things.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Trish, for this talk. Absolutely fascinating. And I really, I just wish people would take note and maybe come and have a chat with you for any symptoms that they're getting, because I, like you, I truly believe that there is an answer out there, and it's not necessarily in a pill form. Thank you for your time. This has been a Keto Coffee with Karen. I'll see you next week.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.